I suppose I should probably talk a little bit about myself, just in case someone is watching for the first time. But my name's Abs, as Danny said. So I originally started off in dentistry. I don't do any of that anymore. I just do aesthetic medicine now. So I treat my own patients here in London. I teach all around the world to doctors in clinics, in hospitals, in different things. I also lecture in different topics in universities and things. Medicine, dentistry, biochemistry, and quantum physics are the kind of things. They're my main subjects. And it's quite varied. So I also am able to get involved in clinical research as well. I was in Milan yesterday, University of Milan. I'm there quite a lot. Biotechnology research. I've done private clinical trials for things. I consult for companies in medical technology, engineering, development, manufacturing, that kind of thing as well. So fingers in quite a few different pies, but it gives me a perspective. And this is what I want. This is the reason I'm telling you a little bit about myself. The perspective is that I can treat patients, but because I'm also in the lab, I can speak to my patients on a level that allows them to see I know what I'm talking about to a really good depth. When I teach doctors, obviously I have my experience, so I'm not talking as someone who doesn't, hasn't walked the walk, so to speak. But also, again, because I'm involved in research and I do a lot of that kind of thing, it allows me to give a depth of knowledge to doctors that I think is not often given by manufacturers. Hopefully, some of you saw that yesterday in the webinar as well. I have a YouTube channel. If you just type in Dr. Abs on YouTube, you'll find a lot of things in there as well. So the perspective is really useful. So, for example, when we're looking at skin rejuvenation today, which is I'll go through, you'll see some of that perspective. And what I really want to say is, manufacturers will tell you what they want to tell you and nothing more. It sounds obvious, but a lot of the time it is selective truth that they are providing you. I know I sound like a conspiracy nut, but hopefully you will actually agree with me fully by the time we go through everything today as well. And that's what I really want to get out. That's what I want you to get out of this. I'm not trying to sell anything. I know this is a sponsored webinar by MedFX to talk about Synacos, but actually I'm just going to go through skin and how you rejuvenate skin, and you can actually decide whatever you want to use afterwards. I'm that confident in Synacos's quality. I'm not going to push it at all. And I'm not even going to give any of my opinions on it either. I am wholly and fully going to be as objective as possible, fully objective as often as possible, unless you specifically ask me for my opinion. And that's important because, number one, yes, I work with this product a lot, but that's a way which allows you to look past any source of bias because I'm being objective. The nose is always in the front of the head and not the back, regardless of whether KOL says it or not. Okay, so I'm going to be objective. But also, this is the important thing, that's the perspective you should have whenever any sales rep is trying to talk about a particular product to you, or whether you're in a conference and you're at a talk and a manufacturer is trying to give you talk about a particular product. I'm going to give you things today that if you want to write them down, there are questions that you can save on your phone. Anytime anyone comes to you with a skin injectable, you can whip that out and just go through that list, and it will allow you to quantitatively see the difference between skin boosters, because there's so many on the market and they're using so many different perspectives and so many different technologies. And you just think, well, should I use this, or should I use Profilo, or should I use polynucleotides, or should I use NCTF? Bal asked in the chat, how do you actually know which one's the best? Because they all say, well, this is the best thing since sliced bread. This is going to really rejuvenate your skin. This is going to tighten your skin. It's going to make it more elastic. But at the end of the day, there are factual, actual anatomical facts, not opinions, that determine whether you have elasticity, whether you have tighter skin, etc., etc. And that's what I want to go through. Even though this is specifically about Synacos, I'm going to go through all of that in an unbranded way for as long as possible. So I'm just going to check the chat, make sure there's no burning questions so far since I've been talking. Is the technique you use while injecting Synagos different to the basic protocol? For me personally, in terms of the depth, it's exactly the same. In terms of the layout on the face will be different, and I can talk a little bit about that later on. So I'm going to start off very, very basic and just challenge some assumptions that you have, so that you really start to think in the right way. I'm sure some of you, if you've seen my YouTube, if you saw me last night, you will know the answer to this. This is interactive. I want to see in that chat if you can type your answers in. So I'm going to ask you, how many types of collagen do we have? I'm just looking over at the screen here. I wonder if anyone can get the right answer. If any of you remember from last night, I'll be very, very impressed. Oh, Matt's got it straight away. That's good. Okay, good memory, Matt. Someone says 25, 28. Okay, my message seems to be going out. Up until a few years ago, I never saw anyone talk about different types of collagen. I started doing it. People thought I was weird. I mean, I still think I'm weird, let's be honest. But now a lot of people come up to me. I mean, even at ACE, I was there. People come up to me and go, and they say, I just went over to the stand, and the first thing I did was ask them which type of collagen. And I'm glad that I'm having this effect on people. And you can see the answer there. It is 28. Now, why is that important? Because it allows you to understand that there are many different functions of collagen. And it's like, for example, you have, let's say, different types of bricks when you build a house, a skyscraper, an apartment block, a factory, whatever you want. Many different types of bricks in different sizes, made out of different materials. They need different adhesives to stick together. And based on what you're building, you need something that marries up with that. So, for example, if you're building a shed, you can probably just have a single layer of brick. That's all you need. If you're building a massive skyscraper, you need big concrete breeze blocks, right? And you can't use them for the opposite functions. You can't use big concrete breeze block for a shed because it will take up half the shed size anyway, and vice versa. And so collagens are exactly the same. They are bricks. You put them together, and and then they have functions based on how you put them together and what they start from and what they go into. Just like a muscle has an origin and an insertion, collagen is exactly the same. So if you're interested in, how they've got some great comments in the chat here. I've been driving drug reps nuts asking questions. I'm so glad to find you. Thank you, Sharon. Roscoe already says 4, 17, and 7 are the key players. Yes, for tightness, they are some of the key players. I'm glad this is sinking in. So we'll go into that as well. I have no idea what I was saying. As you can tell, this is live, and I always have no script. But that's the reason collagens are in so many different types. So it's worthwhile understanding what they kind of look like. Okay, when we think of collagen, I'm sure we all think of a structure that is similar to DNA. It's like strands, and they're kind of twisted like a spiral. And I understand why people picture that in their head when we say collagen. But actually, if you just have this spirally bit, which is called a helix, a triple helix, because there's 3 strands and they all kind of twist, and then you get this spiral made of 3 strands, a triple helix. So there is no such thing as a standalone triple helix collagen. If you have just a triple helix on its own, it's like having a single brick on its own. It actually can't do anything. When you put adhesive on that brick and you lay it down in a particular place in combination with other things, so some cavity wall insulation on one side, some rendering on the other side, then you have some actual function because it's in a context, it's in an environment. And collagen is the same. You have a section of collagen, which is the triple helix bit, but then on this side and on this side, what we call the N terminus and the C terminus, you have other things attached to that triple helix. So the point of the triple helix is that it has some mechanical properties that we can take advantage of, but it has no function if the mechanical properties aren't embedded within a physical system in order for it to be in a particular position. So for example, it might have this domain here and this domain here. That means it can attach onto this membrane and then provide some support for this other collagen or this other cell or this other membrane. Then you've got some connection. Then you have actual function. A triple helix just floating around is nothing. It's just waste. It's white noise. And so that's how collagens differ. You can think of that triple helix in your mind, but they all must have different things on either side in order for the function to actually be relevant, appropriate, to be even present in the first place. And so when we talk about different collagens, we are talking about the differences outside of the triple helix in the entire protein domain. So I'm going to switch over to my iPad, which I have in front of me here. That has got a little blank thing so I can draw. I'm not a very good drawer, but please bear with me. Desktop 3, share. So let me just pull this out of the way. Can you all just type in the chat? Just give me a yes if you can see it, the plain white background. I'm just going to draw some random things on there. One sec. Okay, you can see it. Perfect. Let me make that a bit bigger. Cool. So you should all be able to see that. Let me make that a bit bigger again. That's cool. So yes, it's plain white, but I'm going to start drawing on it right now. So if we look at the skin, then we have the fat underneath like this. As you can tell, I did really well at GCSE. I think I got it. What did I get in GCSE? I think it was must have been something terrible anyway. These two layers, the epidermis and the dermis, are very common, and that's what we layer, that's what we label. And underneath, we just have the fat. Now, it's very key to understand this is extremely, and I mean extremely simplified, to the point where you are missing so much vital information that it becomes almost impossible to compare skin products when you just have this limited view of just these two things, because tightness is not, increasing what's around there. That actually has no effect. All it does is make the sort of volume or the size of dermis bigger. But, that's still not the tight. If you're trying to keep something tight, think of, let's say, a belt going around your trousers, right? It goes through the loops. So there is a physical interaction, there's a physical connection, there's a physical locking mechanism where they intertwine. That's the key word, they intertwine. And that's how they are held together. And so when we talk about this, if we expand this view, sorry, the pen's a bit wobbly because I'm having to hover my hand in the air. So this entire section here is the DEJ. And so when we're talking about intertwinement of proteins and intertwinement of the different layers between the epidermis here and the dermis here, what we are talking about is this section here, the DEJ. If you want tight skin, what you are saying from a clinical translation perspective is you want a better quality dermoepidermal junction. Saying you want tight skin, which means thicker epidermis or thicker dermis, actually makes no sense, because you can have a bigger pair of trousers, but it doesn't mean it's any tighter if the belt can't actually go through the loops and keep it tight against you. So the tightness is this section here, and that is the key. So if you want to understand skin tightness in the context of facial rejuvenation, combining skin injectables with fillers and things, and we can talk about different technologies for skin like lasers and LED and anything else people want to talk about in the chat, it's absolutely fine. But if you want to combine them, then you have to talk about the clinical translation of patient buzzwords, so tightness, elasticity, etc., because we're clinicians, we have to be specific and technical. So then we end up exploring this dermoepidermal junction. So I'll just make it nice and big. So we can split this into different layers and all sorts of things. So I'm going to draw what here, obviously not at this angle, it's just because I've drawn it that way. Bit of nucleus there, etc. These are keratinocytes. I'll just put a K. There we go. Can you all just type to make sure you see my pen drawing? If you just put pen in the chat, I'll know that you can see the drawings coming through. Yeah, okay, perfect. So these keratinocytes, they themselves have this same concept. So we've talked on the left-hand side here about the layers coming together, and that's how you get tightness. But actually, you take that concept all over the body to every single tissue, including this section here. The ability of the keratinocytes to actually latch into the dermoepidermal junction is another form of this intertwinement of proteins. Now, I'm not going to get super complex because I think all of you will go to sleep, but I will give you a slightly more palatable version of how this mechanism occurs. So inside the keratinocytes, you have this structure here. I'll just draw it as a circle, and I'll label that here. Here we go. It's a hemidesmosome. This is a structure, it has structures within it as well as like a Russian doll, but without getting too complex, this is how it all connects in, basically. Let me just move my mouse out of the way 1 second. There we go. So if you're really interested, the way the keratinocyte connects in, you have multiple different proteins all connecting together. So I'll just do another, whoops, arrow here. So one of the things we have is called pectins. We have antigens. So BP is bullous pemphigoid antigen, and 230 is the weight. So it's the weight is measured in kDa, kilodaltons. And this is kind of makes a sort of plaque, almost like the plaque on your teeth. They kind of stick like a biofilm. And what happens is at the base of this, which is there, you have this latching mechanism into, this is the first part of the DEJ. And this is called the lamina. Oh God, that writing is bad. Lucida. Hopefully you can all read this. So in the lamina lucida, this is where I think Matt has written in the chat. He knows that this is where generally you'll find collagen type 17. Okay, and this is a linking mechanism. But in this region, you also find things like alpha 6 beta 4 integrin. This is another type of linking mechanism. You also find BP 180, which is another protein that's involved in all this. And if you really want to know, you also have something called P105. Now, I don't expect anyone to know what all of these. I'll be very impressed if anyone knows what all these are, but these are proteins that are present. Why am I telling you this? Why am I going to this level of detail? A few reasons. Number one, it allows you to understand the complexity of what you're asking. Skin tightening is not as simple as just increase the collagen. All of these linking mechanisms must be present. If you increase a certain type of collagen, but you don't have the linking mechanism, how is that collagen going to be put in the right position? How is it going to have an origin and an insertion, just like a muscle? How is it going to provide any actual tightening increase, i.e. function, if you don't increase the entire complex together? And that's the key, the complex. I just want you to see what is in this complex so that you understand that a manufacturer that just says we increase collagen is, nonsense, because it's useless to just increase collagen on its own. So let me just scroll down very slightly. After that, you have the second portion. Oh, I've run out of space here. Didn't realize the canvas was so small. Anyway, oops. Lamina densa. This is another layer. This is mainly associated with collagen type 4. And then there's 6 genes that make collagen 4. I won't go into those, but you have this layer. And this is highly associated with laminin. Now, laminin, there's many different types of laminin. Mainly in the skin, you'll find things like gamma 1 and 332. You also have 511. And again, I don't expect people to know exactly what these are, but this is just to give you an idea of the complexity and to give you an idea of how collagen actually works. Because in all my years in this industry, someone comment below in the chat if they have seen this, but I've never seen anyone actually describe on a proteomic level what you need to tighten skin and then relate that to products in such a way that is brand free and objective, because this is all objective. This is anatomy. None of my opinion is in any of this. After the lamina densa, then you have just enough space there. Lamina reticularis, and this is highly associated with collagen type 7. Now, collagen type 7 is very unique. It is what's known as an anchoring fibril. And you have types of collagens. I said there's 28. Fiber or fibrils are one type. Facets. I'll just write them here in case you're interested. So you have fibrils, facets, networking collagens. Then you have anchoring, etc., etc. I won't go on forever. Facet stands for fibril associated collagen with instructed triple helix. So they give a lot of function. Anchoring is an interesting one. This is why I gave you this list, because there's only one anchoring collagen, and that's type 7. Shows you the importance of this. The body can utilize collagen types in multiple places, generally speaking, around the body. So it has an apparatus that is recyclable. Imagine a factory that can make this product and that product at the same time, right? For instance, in your car, you will have buttons that do something and then buttons that don't push in because there's no function for them. The reason you have that is because in the factory, it saves, they make that entire panel as one unit. And then so if it's in a car that can use all these buttons, it becomes pressable. If it's not, and it just stays hard. But it saves them having to have milling machines for every single car, and they can save the amount of apparatus they need. That is the same in nature. We have that intracellularly, that principle, because in nature, we did not evolve from wasting energy where it's not needed. And so we have apparatuses which generate multiple different types of collagen because it's found in multiple different parts of the body. Collagen 7, it's like making a brand new factory with brand new equipment for just one specific car. It's got to be an important car in order for you to do that and spend all that money on it. And that tells you about the importance of collagen 7. Collagen 7 is the last word in bringing the layers together. Because let me just scroll 1 second. So out of this, you basically have collagen 7. This is going to be a really sort of rudimentary drawing, but it's just to illustrate the point. I know it looks like a uterus. This is not a gynecology webinar, don't worry. So you have 2 strands of collagen, number 1, number 2, and they're coming together almost like hands picking something up off the floor, right? Something heavy up off the floor. But you have the 1, and you also have collagen 3 going through these arms, right? They hook everything. And that is the actual way that one layer of the skin connects into the other layer of the skin. And again, I really want to emphasize, there's no opinion here. There is no brand. I have not sold anything. I've not recommended any product. This is just anatomy. This is the perspective I always have. This is why sales reps hate me, because I see past their marketing and I only look for the objective things they say. And if you understand this, you know what to look for in a skin injectable very, very quickly. I appreciate my drawings are pretty terrible, but hopefully you've understood the principles of it and you know what to ask sales reps. So what to ask sales reps? Obviously, what type of collagen are you producing? Now, I made a video relatively recently on my YouTube channel about polynucleotides. It's not saying polynucleotides are good or bad. It's just saying what they make. And you know, there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of marketing around them. But I've never understood it because I look at things on this level. You know, polynucleotides are mainly generating what? Collagen 3 there, collagen 1 there. Some of them may generate a little bit of other things, but if you're mainly 1 and 3, tell me now, objectively and factually, how that can bring the layers together. We said already, if I scroll up to this bit here, so there, if we increase what's in there without actually altering this bit here, how are you actually increasing the tightness? Yeah, no rep has ever been able to answer that for me. And they're stumped. They're in silence because there is no answer. And so if you want 1 and 3, let's say you're using polynucleotides, that's fine. Use polynucleotides. There is nothing wrong with them. I'm not anti-polynucleotides. I am pro looking at things in an objective way. But if you want, you know, 1 and 3, fine. But also all of these and all the stuff in here, why would you turn that down? If the stuff that can make this can also make 3 and 1 here. If you had the choice between just these or the entire thing, and I know which one I would choose. And so, yes, there's other products on the market. That was just one example. Any product you like, you want to think about, you have to ask which types they're producing. Now, if they only produce 1 and 3, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not anti 1 and 3. That's, you know, collagen increases is fine if it's 1 and 3. But I would rather personally have 1, 3, 17, 4, 7, as well as the other stuff that Synacos can produce, which is why I started using it in the first place. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some other things you need in the skin for actual tightness and anti-aging and looking young and youthful and all the rest of it. But before I move on, please type away if you have any particular questions about anything on this slide, anything that I've mentioned. I'll just give you 30 seconds because I know some questions take a little while to type. If no one types anything in the 30 seconds, I'll move on to the next part that I'm talking about here. Nope, I think we're all good. That's fine. So let me just clear this. There we go. Perfect. So we've talked about the collagen being produced, but a lot of manufacturers, and this is really key, you have to pay attention to the wording. I want you to really look for this. Next product you look at, I want you to see if this is there. They talk about glow and all this airy fairy stuff, but then they also say it increases elasticity. Okay. I just want some of you in the chat to tell me, so that I don't bore you with stuff you already know, where do you think elasticity comes from in the skin? Don't be afraid to give wrong answers because that helps me. It tells me what to go through and what not to go through. Okay, one person said elastin. Anyone think differently? Anyone think anything else? A couple of people have said elastin. Okay, I won't go on too long, but yes, quite a lot of you have said elastin. But everyone that's answered has only said elastin. That's correct, and there's a reason it's called elastin in the first place, by the way. So if you want elasticity, or if a manufacturer comes to you or a sales rep comes to you and says the word elasticity, you've got to look out for that, okay? Like a firewall on the lookout for a virus. As soon as they say elasticity, your response should be, oh, so you produce elastin, and if so, how much? That should be a reaction. You shouldn't even really have to think about it. Because if they realize that you know that elasticity comes from elastin, they can't pull the wool over your eyes if they have no claim to produce elastin. Okay, so that's really crucial, and that's why I wanted to go through it so significantly. So elastin is the single protein that's mostly responsible for elasticity in the skin. It has a very long half-life in the skin. Depending on which scientific paper you quote, it will last around 40 years. I can probably take it off the drawing bit now. I'm just going to take it back onto my camera. 1 second. Stop share. Okay, perfect. So it's almost singularly responsible for creating that elasticity. So if that's elasticity, if some of you could just post in the chat, what is the difference between collagen and elastin? We've gone through a little bit of collagen. I just want to see if everything has made sense to you guys. Someone's also said, please compare Synacos with the Allopro. Absolutely fine. I can do that for you as well. Okay, so everyone's scared to answer the question, what's the difference between collagen and elastin? So I'll answer it for you. So it's an important thing to know because they're talked about in the same breath, but they also, Joe Erickson put collagen strength, elastin, elasticity. Someone says not sure. Okay, fine. So that helps me because it tells me what's in your minds. So I can kind of customize this, obviously with no script to you guys. So Joe said collagen strength. They are different proteins, Modi said as well. Yeah, so collagen strength. Now, you have to define what you mean by strength, okay? Because the word strength, when you talk about skin from a sales context, it's like Donald Trump, okay? Hear me out. So when Donald Trump came into power, his campaign slogan was "Make America Great Again," right? If you think about it, that doesn't actually mean anything because to someone who's extremely far right, to them that means lots of far right policies. To someone who's far left, that means lots of far left policies. And you see this in politics a lot. They have slogans which can be interpreted in different ways by different people, so they all vote for that person, right? And that's why you have such generic slogans in those kind of things. No one's gonna have a slogan that says eliminate the far right or eliminate the far left, obviously. And saying strength in the skin context or glow or brightness, that's like Donald Trump because they're generic terms. There is no definition of those things in a sales context. And so the manufacturer can just use them knowing that you cannot say, oh, this doesn't provide strength, because there's nothing for you to prove it doesn't provide strength because there's no definition of it. And that's why at the start of this webinar, I went through anatomy. Because if you talk about the anatomy, if you say, oh, it provides this protein, no one can argue. It can only be interpreted in one way because it's a fact of anatomy. It's not a subjective opinion of what someone thinks of the word strength. So thanks, Joe, for putting that in there. I think that's a really good bit of feedback that I've gotten. So collagen, not necessarily strength. Someone else has put strength, whereas elastin allows skin to be flexible and bounce back to the original shape. So yes, elastin does that. But again, someone else has said collagen provides strength. Get out of this habit. Get out of the habit of using words that can be interpreted subjectively and go objective. And collagen's function is to provide, for instance, signaling molecules. It is to provide position. It is to provide a scaffolding in the extracellular matrix as a depot of signaling molecules. It is a part of the extracellular matrix that affects the rate of cell receptor interactions by limiting or increasing the availability of those stimulants into the receptors which receive the stimulus. And so it has very specific biological functions. Elastin, on the other hand, is mainly, for the purposes of this conversation, shall we say, a mechanical function, a physical function, as opposed to biological. Yes, collagen provides some connections, physical connections, to keep things in the right place. So there is that element, but it's very much biological as well. And elastin is purely to get back to the original shape, that's all. So elastin doesn't have the level of biological interaction or control or function or regulation that collagen does. And that's why they're very, very different. And collagen, if you were to have elastin that is very stretchable and it can return back to its shape, from a protein context, that requires very, very specific amino acid conjugation when you build that protein out inside the cell, inside the endoplasmic reticulum or Golgi apparatus. And so when you do that specific type of protein for elastication, it limits what you can do. It's like, for instance, if you were to build, a car that is extremely quick, has a massive engine, but in order to maintain that speed, it's only got 2 seats, it's got no boot, it saves weight by not having air conditioning, etc. Once you've chosen your path and you have to produce one function so well, it limits what other functions you can do. You can't do your weekly shopping in it now. You can't drive through the desert because there's no air conditioning, right? And so elastin is so specialized in its elastication ability. It's so good at that. It limits what else it can do in other places as well. Doesn't mean it doesn't have any other function. Technically, it does. I won't go into that right now, but you should hopefully start to see the picture between those things. And so elastin is the elasticity. So your skincare, your skin injectable products should produce elastin if they are claiming it gives elasticity to the patient. That is a direct link. So there's another thing that is really important to look for, and that is something called fibronectin. Could you just put yes or no if you guys are aware what fibronectin is? If a load of people say yes, I'll just skip this. I don't want to patronize you. I'll just give you sort of 20 seconds or so, see what you reply with. Okay, one person said no, 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 no. Okay, I think that's answered the question. Fine. So fibronectin is another protein. Think of it as, this is really, really shrunken down view. Think of it as something that acts a little bit like glue, right? So one of the functions is to anchor cells in the right place and keep them in the right position. And remember, if there's no position for something, there is no function. Just like if there's no temperature for it, there's no acidity for it. All these things, parameters in nature, are required for a specific output to be produced by a localized or systemic biological system. So fibronectin, it anchors cells in the right place. It's useful for stem cell differentiation. We have keratinocytes in our skin, which are a form of stem cells. And so it's useful for all these things and making sure everything is in the right place. For instance, if I was to just switch back, let me just go back to my iPad here to share. There we go. If I was to show you the structure of collagen type 7, whoops, there's the brush. There we go. This looks like a long gummy worm. just see if I can change the color. 1 second. That's fine. I can't change the color. So this section here, this section here. Now remember I said there's a triple helix somewhere. That's this section here. This is the triple helix. And then you have this section here, which is a cartilage matrix protein. Von Willebrand's factor, whoops. Alpha 1, triple helix. And then you have something here called a so this is the bit we think about, but these all have functions on the other side. So all of this and all of this has a function. So this FN3 is fibronectin. So just from the fact that collagen 7 is the final handshake between the top and bottom layers, and that part of its structural makeup itself requires fibronectin, specifically type 3, and there's 9 of those, tells you the importance. So if you are going to tighten the skin, this is why I went through the entire complex with you earlier. If you're going to tighten the skin, you have to look for products which can label some of the things in that junction, which are also increased. So fibronectin 3, you have connections around this section on collagen type 7. This is what connects into collagen, collagen 4, as an example. And sorry, also lamins. And so when you see that without a particular molecule, the entire protein cannot exist, it tells you the importance of it. And that's why I've drawn this to show you fibronectin. On the end here, you just have this bit here, you have a protease inhibitor. It's a bovine pancreatic trypsin inhibitor. I won't go into that. That's another lecture for another day. But hopefully with that, you can see, let me get back to my camera. You can see the importance of fibronectin. So ideally, the ideal skin product would be able to look at all those different things and produce all of those things in that complex that we drew. And then you can factually, objectively say you are increasing skin tightness. Now, if you're able to do that, then this is the next question. I hope you write this down because this should stay with you for the rest of your life. Does it work by inflammation or physiology? It's exceptionally important. You want to talk about risk of procedure, complications of procedure. It starts with what treatment you're doing in the first place. If you're injecting something and it's creating an effect in the skin, always remember this. If you are inducing something into the skin, how is it being produced? Are you stressing things or are you improving the physiology? Is it inflammation or physiology? Inflammation or homeostasis, whichever word you want, physiology or homeostasis. Most products, let's be kind, a lot of products or a significant portion on the global market in this category work by inflammation and stress. That's why when we have a wound, we close it using collagen type 1. It is a defensive collagen. Scar tissue is going to be type 1 collagen. So if you are stressing the cells, what do you think they're going to do? Obviously, they will make type 1. They may make some type 3, which can be converted into type 1 later, but they will make type 1. And so if it works by inflammation, you may not even need to ask, which types of collagen are you making? Because it's you know now, if it's inflammation and you're stressing, what can they do to eliminate that stress? Okay, if you have a wound and you get a scar, why has it made that scar? Because it doesn't want to be attacked in the same place, in the same direction for the same amount again. That's why we produce a scar. And so if your product works by inflammation, that is one reason you are not generating the type of collagen you would like. You are only generating the type 1 and type 3, which again is fine if that's what you want, but why would you want just that? Whereas if you're improving the physiology, which is bloody difficult, by the way, then you can choose whatever combination of proteins or selection of proteins you would like, because you are in control. You are in the driving seat. The cell can do anything you want. Think of it as prodding a car along with some kind of stick in the back. It's only ever going to go a slow speed, and it can't really go that far. And it's really difficult to turn the wheels. Whereas if you get the keys and you go inside, you can drive it as fast as you want, wherever you want, and as far distance as you want. And that's the difference between inflammation and physiology. If you are doing a physiological improvement, everything is going to improve. And that's why one of the main reasons I choose to use Sunacos. I know I'm not creating stress and inflammation as the method of improvement. There may be some, for example, when the needle goes in through the skin, you've reached the skin, etc. And so that's why you have longer lasting results as well. If your product is working by inflammation, you cannot have long lasting results. Why would your body prolong inflammation? Why would it allow a single episode of inflammation to perpetuate by itself? It obviously wouldn't. That's why when we have a wound, it closes it straight away to stop the inflammation. Whereas when you have physiology, it can just keep going. Imagine you get healthy by going to the gym, dieting, staying active, blah, blah, blah. It's not like your body's going to fight that. It will improve again and again and again. Whereas if you're very unhealthy, you have carbs all the time. What happens? Your body is going to try and stop producing insulin because it's not going to be able to process those things anymore. And so there's a reason physiology versus inflammation is very important. And there's a reason many manufacturers don't talk about it, because then they have to admit they are working by inflammation. For example, products in the market that work by calcium hydroxyapatite. Why are they only producing type 1 and 3? Because on the periodic table, calcium is way over on the left or on the right, depending on how the video is flipped for you guys. But it's on the left if you're looking at the periodic table. So it's right next to potassium and sodium and magnesium and cesium and francium and all these things. That means it is a very alkaline product. It's a very alkaline earth metal, earth mineral. The body does not exist in that much alkalinity. There is no tissue that can function optimally in that alkalinity. And so that's why we use calcium hydroxide in root canal treatment in teeth, because it is so alkaline. The tooth lays down layers of dentine to protect itself from that calcium. It's a defense mechanism. So when you're putting that in someone's face, the reason you're only producing a certain type of collagen is because there's no physiological improvement. You're basically just trying to make scar tissue. But polylactic acid, if you look at that generically, the amount of scar tissue that is possible with polylactic acid is ridiculous. You look at pictures of people mid-facelift, okay, where the surgeon has sliced through the layers and they're trying to do their job, but they can't because there's masses of scar tissue from polylactic acid that's been used. And again, it's not physiology, it's inflammation. And so when you have new products in the market that combine hyaluronic acid with calcium, as an example, so what are you doing? I would rather use dermal fillers and then something like Sunacos on top to improve the skin that way instead, because I'm not working by inflammation as the mainstay of treatment. Now, in terms of how you combine this with other products, I always say if you can improve the skin quality first, whatever clinical treatment in terms of devices and other treatments like fillers and toxin, the better the outcome that you're going to get. A toxin may be an exception. There is no official license for combining Synacos with other things, by the way. I'm speaking as an individual, not for on behalf of anyone. Toxin, I would say, if you're going to do it, probably Botox first and then Synacos, because we're trying to build proteins that are like structures, but the skin is constantly moving. It's hard to keep things in the right position to connect together if you're always moving. So you keep the skin still, and then it's going to be much easier to build those intertwining and interlocking mechanisms together. But let's say you're using, I don't know, dermal fillers or laser and things like that, when you make the skin look nice or look good, first of all, then you need less filler because it's tightened up and the volume loss probably isn't going to look as bad. Your laser is going to be less risky because if you thicken that skin up by improving the physiology, you're less likely to go too deep because you've increased what it is you're treating. The ability to recover from laser damage is much higher now because the physiology rate has increased. If you're doing radiofrequency, even the ability to tolerate coagulation from the heat of radiofrequency and then rebuild from that is much improved. You look at full facial rejuvenation procedures where they have this and this and this, and there's different devices, and patients that have devices that they don't get a result from. Why is that? because the devices work, right? They will do what they're designed to do. As long as you plugged it in, it's working, software update, it's all doing the same thing in everyone's clinic, it should get you some sort of results. If they haven't, you can't just blame the device. Actually, you should blame the lack of preparation for that. So if you're doing radiofrequency, for example, and you tighten that skin up with Synacos and you improve the physiology, the ability to take away coagulated tissue and then replace it with brand new tissue is much higher because the physiology has increased. If you're doing a load of treatment that just causes inflammation, and I don't know, maybe it makes some sort of scar tissue as well, how is that going to help? You've not increased the elasticity because the scar tissue is rock solid. And then you've heated it up. The heat might not even break all of it down. So what do you expect is going to happen? And so that's why it's so good to treat or pre-treat before clinical treatment, with some sort of device, using something that improves physiology rather than something that increases inflammation and stress. So I hope that gives you a rough idea of why I use Synacos and what it can do. I haven't gone into the actual cellular mechanisms of it because I will probably be here for several more hours. But if you guys are happy to stay, I think all of you are still online somehow, not left already. Just type in the chat if you want me to talk a little bit about how it actually works when you inject it in the skin and what it does. But one yes. See if anyone else wants that. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes. Okay, fine. Let's go into it as well. So it has two things that are inside. One is amino acids and one is hyaluronic acid. So it's not designed to actually make the cell do anything, which I know sounds really odd considering everything I've just said, but it just sits outside the cell. And that's it. Doesn't really do much. Because if you put something like mesotherapy in your skin, you're feeding these vitamins into the cell, right? You're putting fuel into the engine, so it has to go somewhere. But then when the fuel runs out, it just stays there again. That's why mesotherapy is never going to be as long-lasting a result as something that improves physiology. If you give your cells a load of vitamin C by injecting the vitamin C in there, great. They'll have some reaction to it and do some work, and it might look great. But then when the vitamin C is gone, like, so what? What do you expect? The patient's going to come back every 5 days for the rest of their life to have vitamin C injected? Like, that's just stupid. And so, that's the difference between inflammation, mesotherapy, or just putting in ingredients, and physiological control. So then the question is, how do you control physiology of any cell, of any tissue, of any organ? It's by using something called the extracellular matrix. So if you imagine my head on screen is a cell, everything around it, so my torso, my arms, this MedFX background, which Danny's put on, all of that is extracellular matrix. So what's outside here? That's where our collagen lives. That's where all the basement membranes are. That's where the elastin is. That's where we have growth factors and signaling molecules and inflammatory markers and diffusion of oxygen between the bloodstream and the cell. They all go through this place. That's where hyaluronic acid sits. That's where fibronectin sits. There's so much going on around there. That is what controls physiology, right? Because if you think about it, every cell in our body, they all have the same DNA, right? Obviously they do because it's part of us. So if they all have the same DNA, how is it that this one sends into a liver cell, this one goes into a myocardial cell, this one sends into a skin cell? It makes no sense, right? I think I was very young in school. I think I was about 11 when I first asked this to my teacher, who was amazed that I was even asking that. But when you ask that question, you answer it by suddenly having a eureka moment and understanding how the ideal product should work. It's the extracellular matrix. So on the edge of every cell, so imagine again, my head is the receptor. Let's pretend on my head there's the forks disappeared from the background. So imagine you have these receptors like this, okay? And what happens is the cell can do anything. It can be anything. It can produce anything. Any other cell can, because the information is there in the DNA. But what tells it what to do and to specialize in this job instead of that job? It's these things, the receptors. So if I have something over here interacting with this receptor, the cell knows, okay, I'm in this region of the body. I'm supposed to be doing this, because there's no eyes, remember. There's no nervous system within a cell. It only gets told what to do based on what it's feeling, okay? It's like a blind person reading Braille. It's touching everything to figure out what there is. And so receptors are like, imagine it's dark in your room, in your house, and you've got to go from one place to another. What do? If it's absolutely pitch black, you touch the wall, and then you walk along the wall by feeling it, and you know where you are. you know, whether to turn left or right or go down the stairs or watch out for the banister or something like that. That's how cells work. They're in the dark because they have no eyes or nervous system, and they feel everything around them. Those are receptors. So physiological control comes from receptor interactions. And that's how this cell over here knows it's in that particular position in the body and knows it's got to do that particular job. And so when we change the extracellular matrix, we change cell function. For example, we have fibroblasts in the skin in the dermis. They're producing mainly type 1 collagen. 90% of the body's collagen is type 1. We have chondrocytes in other parts of the body that produce cartilage, which is type 2 collagen. If you have an environment with some chondrocytes and surrounded by them is type 2 collagen, they're feeling that. They know there's type 2 outside, even though it's come out of them. Once it's gone out, they still don't know what's there because they can't see it. And so they're constantly touching it. And so they know from touching it, right, there's collagen type 2 here. And so we must be somewhere where they need cartilage. Whereas if you take that environment, you pick the type 2 up, you put it in the bin, and then you bring it on a type 1, it's a chondrocytes, remember, not fibroblasts. But you surround them by the products of fibroblasts. These chondrocytes change in fibroblasts, and now they produce type 1 collagen. That should tell you the ultimate way of controlling cell function. Okay. If you just give them a substrate like vitamin A or whatever, something you want to use to make the patient glow, there's no such thing as a glow, by the way, don't get me started on that, then they will just use that up and then they'll carry on doing what they were doing before. Whereas if you change that matrix around them, the physiology changes. They just keep going at that point and they just run with it. And that's how you get longer lasting results. Because the body's doing it itself, it can also create entire complexes, not just individual types of collagen that you might get from wound closure. And that is how Synacos works. So the HA and the amino acids that are in there, they just sit in the extracellular matrix and they just allow the cell to, you know, wake up in the middle of the night, have it be completely pitch black everywhere, but they put their hands on the wall, they feel the HA and the amino acid, and they know which way to walk so they don't run into a wall in the middle of the night. So they feel these things and then they know what to do. That's why when we are embryos, when we are forming as a human being, these cells respond to what's around them to produce the basement membrane, to produce the liver, to produce the keratin in our hair, to produce the sclera of the eyeball, all these things. It's the extracellular matrix. So Synacos is an extracellular matrix product. It's not mesotherapy. It's not an inflammatory stressor. It's not a filler. It's not a toxin. It's not a skin booster that puts final products in and then they get metabolized and run out. It is a physiological improver. It is an extracellular matrix restorer. It is a dermal biogenesis creator. And that's why it's so different. You want to talk about all these other things I've mentioned up till now, how it can do something which other products can't. It's because of this. So the HA interacts with the receptors called CD44 and RAM, RHA-MM, receptor for hyaluronic acid mediated motility. And so when it interacts with the receptors, then what happens is you get information sent to the cell, right? Hyaluronic acid is not a random hydrating thing. Okay, please get this out of your head. You know, some hyaluronic acids can potentially even dehydrate you based on the physiological interaction that they produce, the amount of inflammation they produce. Hyaluronic acid is a signal molecule. When it's linked like this, it's a filler. You don't really have to worry too much. But when it's free like this, it's a signal molecule. It's classed as a drug, actually. It is literally a drug. That should wake you up in terms of thinking, oh, it's this thing that hydrates. No, it is a drug. And sometimes it's metabolized so quickly, there is no ability to hydrate because it's not there long enough. And so when you have specific weights of hyaluronic acid, you send specific signals, right? So as an example, if you're driving along in your car, a lot of car analogies today, as you could probably tell. If you're driving along in your car and it's cold outside, what happens? How does the car interact with the environment in that context? It has a thermometer. So the weather is touching the thermometer, touching, you know what I mean? And the thermometer is then transducing that signal, because this is signal transduction. When something touches a receptor and it makes a change in the cell, that's signal transduction. And it gives you a reading on the dash, right? Based on this temperature or that temperature, you either turn the aircon up really hot, or you turn it really far down, or you just keep it off, or you maintain as it is, or you turn your seat heater on. And that's what happens, right? So different weights of hyaluronic acid are telling the cell it's a different temperature outside. Either put your seat heater on or turn it off, or put the temperature on this, or put the temperature on that, or wind your windows down, blah, blah, blah. And so that's how signal transduction happens. So the HA will interact with CD44, and then CD44 then has an effect inside the cell and tells it what to do. So this weight will create this change, this weight will create that change. Synacos has a combination of different weights in different products. And I know that's confusing. You look at other products that have just one syringe and you put it in. Synacos is separated. And you should understand why now, because different HA weights do different things. And so when you have the 1200 kilodalton in Synacos 1200, appropriately named, that is doing one particular job. It's mopping up the free radicals and protecting the fibroblasts. It's taking the antioxidants out. It is an antioxidant. It's anti-inflammatory, right? It's doing all these things. And then the hyaluronic acid in Synacos Performer, I don't have a box here, do I? No. The hyaluronic acid in Synacos Performer is much, much lighter. It's 200 kilodaltons, which actually is not that good to have unless you have it in such a small amount and in such a way that it can't really cause any problems. And it is in a dose of it's 1 milligram per 0.1 mil injection. That is a really small amount. So yes, low weight hyaluronic acid is pro-inflammatory, but it's there for such a short amount of time. You don't really have to worry about it in the case of Synacos. It's there, so it knocks on the cell's door and then runs away and it opens and goes, who's here? And then it sees the amino acids, starts using those things, and then it changes its physiology, improves its physiology because of the amino acids that are there. So the HA is interacting with these receptors, and that's what's causing all these changes. The amino acids are there, first of all, because they're precursors to collagen. A lot of collagen is glycine and proline, and there's glycine and proline in the amino acid combination. There's 6 amino acids, 2 are glycine and proline. It just says Danny is the host now. I don't know what that means. I'm just going to carry on anyway. Hope I'm not boring everyone. But you have the amino acids there for precursors for making the specific types of collagen. But also, this is the important thing. This is how you don't get duped by different products and manufacturers. It's not about which 6 amino acids. Okay, I can tell you which ones they are. It's not a secret. It's lysine, glycine, proline, alanine, valine, leucine. These are always going to be there. It's about the ratio between each one. Imagine you look at your hand, right? 5 fingers or 4 fingers and a thumb, whatever you guys want to call it. It's not about having 5 fingers. It's about the size between them that allows us to have function. Imagine they were all 30 centimeters long, and maybe the thumb was like a meter long. I mean, what's the point? It's not really going to do anything for you. But if they're this length, you have suddenly a completely different function. That is amino acids. When they are intracellular matrix in a specific ratio, in a specific what we call a stoichiometric ratio, if you want to be technical, it's a field of study called stoichiometry, then you create a different type of signal. I said, different temperature readings in your car make you do different things in the air conditioning. So different combinations of amino acids, even if it's the same amino acids, but different ratios, are completely different signals. And if you look at the work of people like Professor Enzo Nisoli, who is mind-blowingly incredible, by the way. I met him quite recently. He's one of my scientific heroes. I love the guy. He showed just by manipulating amino acid ratios, you actually make it difficult for cancer to grow. And in fact, you actually destroy the cancer, or you start to as well, just using amino acids. That is how crucial they are to life. That's why they're called essential, right? You can't make them yourselves, but you still need them. Why do we need them? Because they help us in so much physiology. And so when you have these combinations of HAs and amino acids interacting with these cell receptors, that's when you get the cell understanding where it is and what it's meant to do. And that's why it then changes its physiology. If you just put something like calcium hydroxyapatite or polylactic acid in there, there's no interaction that tells it, we're in a really good state. We want to produce these proteins. It's just being punched in the face, so it lays down defensive collagens. And so that's the difference. That's where the physiology and inflammation comes from. The interaction between those two is why it's so special. Now, someone in the chat here has asked, please can you compare Synacos with YellowPro? Now, I'm speaking as an individual here. My following words, shall we say, do not represent that of any organization or any company whatsoever. It is just me as an individual. So my understanding is that YellowPro is also a product that uses things like hyaluronic acid and amino acids. Now, speaking objectively, I would suggest what you do is you email both companies, because I don't want you to take my opinion, actually. I want you to email both companies and say, which proteins are you producing in the skin? Okay, wait for that response. Then say, are you producing the most of all products in the world in a maximal physiological way or not? Wait for their response. There's your answer. That's your comparison. And one will say yes, and one, as far as I'm aware, cannot say yes. And the one that can say yes is patented for that as well. So do that research, ask them yourselves, see that response, and then you will understand very, very quickly, very, very instantaneously, the difference between them both as well. Is this being recorded? Yes, I think it's being recorded. So that's a rough idea of the cellular mechanism of how they interact. I can show you some pictures, some before and after pictures of what you can do with it. Is just type in pics in the chat if you'd like to see some before and after pictures of. Yeah, okay. There's a few people. Danny, you can't chat. Come on. Okay, cool. Let me get. People definitely want to see this. Let me pull this up. Okay. Now I'm just going to share my screen. My screen. One there. Share. Can you all just type yes in the chat if you can see this? Yes. Okay. Perfect. So this is a guy who came for tear filler, I think. But this is just Sunnicos, right? If you were to do tear filler on this section here on the left-hand side of the screen, like you'd probably need what, 0.5 mil, something along those lines. And there's this palpable groove here, which you can't put filler there. That's just the contour of the eyeball, right? You obviously can't put filler there. It's too tight. There's no space in the layers. And so you've restricted to here, and it still won't look that good. But you put Sunnicos in, suddenly what you thought was a certain sized volume loss, you haven't replaced it, but suddenly it looks much less. So Sunnicos teaches you volume loss is, or what looks like volume loss may not necessarily actually be volume loss. It can be volume loss to a certain extent that is then exacerbated in its extent by low quality skin over the top, okay? And so this is what you learn from a picture like this. And so when you do Sunnicos first, how much filler are you gonna need now? It's not 0.5 mil, it might be like 0.1, 0.2. Like, think of the risk you have lowered your patient in now. Think of the headaches that you have lowered yourself in now, because you need to inject so much less. And this is self-explanatory. I think this picture, you don't need me to explain it in great amounts of detail. But I'm going to show you something else now. This is I don't know if you want me to say his name. It might even be on the webinar. So this guy, I won't say his name because I haven't got permission, but he was a doctor that came to train with me privately, and he had this pigmentation on eyes. Now, I've not mentioned anything about pigmentation. Someone just said how many sessions were done. I think this one here was about 3 sessions. And what I'm about to show you here, this is 1 session. So like I said, it's not a pigmentation product. But why have I used it for pigmentation? Think back to when I said this is a physiology improver, right? When you have that, what's happening is everything the cell does improves. On last night's webinar, I said, possibly quite controversially, I don't care what my patient is complaining of, be it laxity, be it wrinkles, be it sun damage, be it pigmentation, because on a subcellular level, they're all the same thing. It's just cellular dysfunction, function that has been lost over time. So I'm not trying to treat a symptom. I don't care about treating symptoms. I care about treating physiology. Manufacturers that come to you and say, oh, use this for pigmentation, use this for wrinkles, use this for laxity, use this, blah, 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 blah. Get out. I've got no time for you, because they're all symptoms of reduced cellular function. Why would I want a separate product for everything? It makes biologically, it makes no sense. Aging is DNA quality, the stability of the information carried in the DNA. It is the function of mitochondria. That's it. And so if you are able to improve those things and improve cellular function, why would you need a separate thing for each symptom? It does it all because it improves physiology. That was 1 session. On top is Monday, on the bottom is Thursday, right? So we had the training on the Monday. Danny might have even been there on that one, actually. It was in London. So Monday to Thursday. And if you don't believe me, this is his own message that he said. Have to admit, I was fairly skeptical about the pigment aspect of Sunakos. Difference within a few days is visibly different and actually amazing how significant the change is. He didn't believe that it can also do pigmentation. But this is what we see. Now, I won't go into exactly how it actually does the pigmentation because we will be here all night. I'm sure some of you have kids to get back to, but you can see it does everything. This is why physiology versus inflammation is an important argument to have. Let's have a look at this patient here. Now, first thing to note, the lighting is different. I'm not going to pull the wool over your eyes. I will admit that straight from the off. So take it with a pinch of salt, okay? But what is objective, even though the lighting is different, the relative contrast between this pigment and the outside skin, that's comparable because it's a localized lighting to each picture. So you can see it's quite a stark contrast. You can see it's much, much less. You can see the texture. You can see it's much, much less. This patient never had cosmetic treatment any time in their life. I think their age was probably something around 65 ballpark. I can't remember the exact number. This was, I think, 4 sessions. And you can see it's treated pigmentation. It's treated the texture all at the same time. Very minutely, it's treated the laxity as well. It might just be the neck position, I don't know, but it looks slightly better on this aspect anyway. And it shows you that it does multiple things at the same time. So this perspective on this product for that and that product for that, it doesn't exist in nature. That is not how cells work. They don't need this stimulus for that and that stimulus for this. They need adequately functioning mitochondria with adequate numbers of mitochondria and maintenance of information in the DNA within a cell's life cycle and propagated from one cell to another during mitosis. That's all they need. With that, you have all the cell function that you need. Next slide. This is a patient that came to see me again, teardrop filler. What's the point? I can treat it with just Sunakos. Patient's happy because they get long-lasting results now because their skin is actually tighter as opposed to being the same as what it was to start with. They got under filler risk. They don't have to worry about occlusion. They don't have to worry about moving around the face. They don't have to think about puffiness. I don't have to think about, is the patient going to complain the next day, say it looks lumpy? I've got none of that because nothing is left in the skin. It's all metabolized. There's no implant here like filler. So again, it teaches you that looks like volume loss. I might look at that and go, yeah, let's do some tear trough. But now I look at it and go, let's do Sunakos first. If you still need filler, let's do it. Now you need much less. And so with just Sunakos, this is where we can end up. And so suddenly you learn the difference between volume loss and skin quality. And that perspective is skewed very much towards skin laxity or skin problems, I should say, as opposed to always being volume loss. Sharon's just put in the chat, is it contraindicated in certain conditions? Good question, Sharon. I'm going to show you the official indications and contraindications. The reason I say official is because whenever a product comes onto the market, you have sort of official licensing and intended functional uses, IFUs and things. I'll show you that, and then I'll give you my own personal opinion as well. This is a nose scar. We're doing more scar treatments now because what's happening is we're finding when we improve the physiology, it actually breaks down the body's own proteins. It doesn't just build, it's breaking down using collagenase, old collagen in the form of fibrosis. Tell me one product that can improve pigmentation that quickly and that well, improve texture that well, improve the laxity and produce the proteins it produces, and breaks down selectively the body's own scar tissue, all in one product. I mean, this is what you get with physiology. Everything normalizes. Periorbital Sunakos, how many sessions? So this particular case was 1 session, and I'll be honest, I don't think I've had many patients who haven't seen something after 1 session. If they're really bad to start with, loads of wrinkles, loads of laxity, never anything in life, worship the sun, no skincare, yeah, just be sensible. You're barely going to see anything after the first session. Any gaps in between? Yeah, 2 weeks in between. So I generally say around 3 sessions. But again, you compare this to other injectables in the market that are very trendy ones now, let's say polynucleotides. Pigmentation, what do they recommend? 3 sessions, 2 weeks in between, maybe 4 sessions. That's 1 with 4 days. Just look at the difference in power and decide for yourself which ones you want for yourself. This one is the cellulite version. There is one for cellulite. Specific techniques, I'll talk to you about training in a second. But again, this is from a place called NY Skin Clinic, based in Aberdeen, and thanks to someone called Elaine Wood. Really fantastic injector if any of you are ever in Aberdeen. So she did this case with something called cell, and you can see it just reverses cellulite as well. Again, the physiology is the universal principle here. And then I think one more or two more. Again, on the body, pigmentation, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation specifically now, not just random pigmentation. And part of that, I can't zoom in on this picture, but there's actually little tiny bits of white. They're active whiteheads. It's actually clearing acne as well. Now, I'm not going to say do that because there's a specific way of using it for acne, which I do, which no one else does, because you have to chemically modify it. And if you're not familiar with chemical equations and working things out, I wouldn't recommend that. But Elaine didn't do that. And look at the result that she's done. Oh, someone's calling me. 1 second. Sheila, I'm just on a webinar. Can I call you back? I'm just doing a webinar. It's all right. You're live. You want to say hello? Yeah. All right. That was my friend Sheila. So last one here. Skin laxity. Again, this is from Elaine in Aberdeen and my skin clinic. You can see the way it's just creating these sort of ridges in everything, and then the way it's smooth after. I think there is a slight difference in arm position, if I'm honest, but even then, you can still see some of this ridge here, and just on the side there, it's nowhere near this level. And this is something across the body. So there are versions for the body, there's versions for cellulite, and there's versions for the face. And you do have to combine them sometimes depending on which area you're treating. But again, that comes with your training. Let me just get to the indications, contraindications. That I think who asked that? I think it was Sharon. Yes, so Sharon, here's the official indication, contraindication, adverse event list. Now, I've never had any of these on the right, burning sensation or like heat or ecchymosis. The only ones I would say look out for are redness, where the needle goes in for obvious reasons. Swelling if you inject too much under the eye, because it's a very delicate lymphatic drainage system there. It's very difficult to drain large amounts of volume. And that's it. Swelling and redness. If you're someone who's not very good with your needles because you're new, don't worry. I would suggest the thing you should look out for is bruising, simply because if you can't maintain superficial depth around the eye and the vessels are very, very close, you're going to hit those vessels all the time. And that's it. Even the contraindications is, I personally actually use this to treat eczema. I've had results in 24 hours before. Now, I would never do it for infection because you're just potentially going to spread that all around. But eczema, psoriasis, I use it for those things. For acne, I use it for those things. Rosacea, I use it for those things. I'm not recommending that at all because it is not officially indicated, but I'm just telling you what I personally do in my clinical practice. That's all. So I think hopefully that kind of sums everything up. I'm sure some of you will want to know how to go about training in all this kind of stuff. Let me just stop sharing my screen. There we go. If you are interested, it's not through me, actually. I would recommend you speak to either Danny, who's on here, or also, if you like, if you're in London, if you would like for me to teach you where you can ask other questions as well, that's fine. If you contact someone called Dr. Sheila Lee, L-I, I will just put her Instagram on the chat here. Just give me 1 second to pull it up. Sheila, what is her account? Yeah, okay. That is, I've just put it in the chat there. That's Sheila's account. If you message her, she runs the training in London, and she does get me in. If you are with me, I'm more than happy to put anything you want to talk about, biology, devices, anything at all. And if you are going to do it with me in London, it is Joe Erickson says can't see the chat. Where you put that message, Joe, is the chat. If you do it with me, it is a little bit more in depth. It's not just, oh, you stick this in here and that's how you get your result. I want you to understand how it's happening. I want you to understand the physiology, so you take away a massively interesting new piece of knowledge that you can apply to anything you do in your clinic, not just about how to inject this. Oh, can't see it either. Okay, let me just type it again. I'll spell it. It's just literally at and then Dr. Dr. Sheila, Sheila. I believe the next training session is April 7th. I might be wrong, but message her, just say, look, you saw Amta's webinar, you're interested in the training. She'll give you all the information that you need, and you're very welcome. So it's a little bit more in depth with me. I do go into a lot of other stuff. You're welcome to ask about something completely unrelated as well. It's up to you. And how do we contact you for training? Yes, I would suggest you contact Dr. Sheila. She runs everything here in London. If anyone has any questions, I know we've gone on for a long time. I'm very grateful for all of you sticking around. Let me know. If you're not in London, someone just said they're not in London, either you can travel down, or if you'd like to train somewhere else, I think MedEffects do some different training as well. Danny's in the chat. She, I'm sure, will give you you'll get an email after this. You should get Danny's contact details in there if you're interested in training with her as well. Please ask away if you've got any questions about anything you've seen, you want me to talk about Synagogue in the context of something else. Now is your time. Oh, hang on, there's a few. I didn't see there was questions here. So what about companies like SkinAid who say their drinkable products are providing not collagen, but the nutrients for building collagen? Yes, they are, but so is your plate of food. Okay, it's all nutrients. I would say something like SkinAid, if they are producing collagen, I just want to see the data. I'm not saying SkinAid is good or bad. I don't know it to a fine level of detail. But what I can say, for me, if you want a drinkable, just take the drinkable version of Synacos. You know, it's called Nutricos. And that is going to give you a daily drinkable version of the injectable treatment. It's very good. How long do you recommend to wait after toxin before you inject these boosters? Everyone are vague, so I tend to wait 2 weeks or until the full effect of Botox, then inject Synacos. I've known others who do all in the same sitting. Physiologically, that doesn't seem appropriate to me. Yeah, absolutely right to hear. On the same sitting, it doesn't make sense because you've got different signals for the cells. They're all trying to do different things, so they'll just complete each other. So I would suggest if you're going to do that, do the toxin. Now, the association of the complex in protein around toxin is done within about 60 seconds, right? It's going to work. Once you've done that and you are happy that the treatment is over, let's say about probably 3 weeks, something like that, then you can do the Synacos if you want. If you can wait till 4, even better. The reason I suggest that is because when you inject toxin, what happens is you immediately see a dip in skin elasticity because you're dropping sebum level, and that's going to affect cell function. So if you're able to wait the 4 weeks, my personal opinion is that it's going to allow the Synacos to work in a slightly friendlier environment than straight away. But I appreciate patients want things quickly. If you have to do it after 2, then yeah, just go for it. You're okay. There's no sort of negative interaction or adverse event. Yeah.
I don't want to keep you for the rest of the evening.
I'll go all night. Don't worry. We've got plenty of questions.
And it's been such an interesting session. I personally have learned lots and lots myself, so I'm sure everybody has. I know there's lots of questions in the chat. So what I'll do is we'll go through those together, and then I'll get them out to everybody. Is that okay? Save you
Not at
answering them
all.
all
Not at
this
all.
evening.
I mean, there's only a few left. I don't mind.
Oh no, okay. Well then, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Matt says, can you speak about the safety of Synacos with regards to vascular occlusion or causing granuloma? I'm assuming technically as it's close to 0 due to the structure. Yeah, Matt, you're right. I have got it in the vessel before, and nothing happened. I watched it track along the vessel and it just disappeared because there's no cross-linking. So there's never been a reported adverse reaction in over 1 million injections of Synacos. You know, it's won safety awards for those kind of reasons. So it's very, very safe. Granuloma, not really, because a granuloma is going to form when there's something there to form around. Nothing stays in the skin, right? The hyaluronic acid is, first of all, it's there already. There's nothing foreign there. And the amino acids are used up as part of the metabolism. So there's nothing left over to form a granuloma either. But good question, really good question. I see Synacos Performer is replacing 200. It's being used around the eyes. Yeah, Performer is the upgraded version of 200. A few differences. The main one is it's just going to get you more results. It's an updated ratio between amino acids, that's stoichiometric ratio. And so you get more production of those collagens and the better types of collagens as well. Do you mind repeating the questions to ask different companies, for example, Yellow Pro? So the first is which collagen are producing? The second is long-term physiology. Yeah, so you want to ask which collagens are you producing? Then you want to ask how much are you producing? Is it with inflammation or physiology? Is it the most of all products in the world? Okay, there's no point having something that's second from the bottom if you can afford something that's the top of the list, right? How about immune compromised patients? Yeah, good question. So I would suggest just be careful, right? Now, there's nothing in there that is going to cause any further immunocompromise for that particular patient. Synacos Performer has 200 kilodalton hyaluronic acid. If someone is really sensitive, that may give a temporary bit of inflammation or a temporary issue. I suspect that is it. If you're ever in doubt, just leave it, you know. Refer them to someone who's more experienced in that kind of thing, either someone like myself or someone who I've trained in your area. So Yellowpray contains, yep, those amino acids, and Synacos contains those amino acids. Does a lack of valine and leucine make meaningful difference in outcome? Valine and leucine are hydrophobic amino acids, right? So what that means is they push away water. So when they push away water, they're creating a drier environment temporarily because they're used up, right? When you do that, you push away water, you can push away the hyaluronic acid as well. So you actually reduce the activity of the hyaluronidase enzyme by 40%. When that happens and you create a hydrophobic environment, that is inductive of specific protein types and collagen types to be produced. And that's why it's so unique. So it does make a big difference. And actually, what's really fantastic about that question to hear is the fact that you will find that all over the place. Synacos was basically the first and only product that you saw the ability to use amino acids, thanks to the research of people like Professor Enzo Nisoli that I mentioned. Over the years, more and more amino acid people have propped up. If you look at their ingredients, just pay attention to what's in it. And it's remarkably similar to Synacos. And amazingly, they'll come on the market and then they'll disappear because there are patents in place to protect that formula. So it's not a coincidence that Synacos was first and other people are coming on later, and their ingredients look suspiciously similar as well. Just pay attention to that, and you'll see how politics works in the manufacturing of these things. Does Medifex train in Ireland? Yes, I am doing a training session in Ireland, I think on the 22nd of May. You can email. I don't know if there's any spaces left, but you're very welcome to email and ask. Is the injection technique for Performer the same as 200? No, great question. It is different because we have learned more now from more people using it, more research ever since. And that's something you'll learn in the training as well. Retraining in Northern Ireland/Ireland. Thank you. Yes, please email Medifex and they will sort everything out for you. Like I said, 22nd of May, I'm there. I think I'm in Northern Ireland. Not sure where. I just get told where to turn up, to be honest. Can you use it on patients on chemotherapy?
Crumlin.
Is it Dublin? Is that where it is?
Crumlin.
Okay. Crumlin. Okay, I've not even heard of that. Sounds like something from Harry Potter. Can you use it on patients who are having chemotherapy? To be honest, if they're having chemotherapy, I wouldn't do anything, right? They've got more important things in their life. I understand some people on chemotherapy, you know, they care about their appearance and things. That's fine. Their body is not going to be functioning the same. You know, if something goes wrong, you are going to be taking a bullet in the neck. Just stay away. Even if it is safe, I just would not recommend it at all, personally. If they really want treatment, again, refer them to someone who's able to take that risk because of their experience and expertise. How do Synacos and polynucleotide results compare in the eye area? Now, that's a good question. What I would suggest is look at the result that I just showed you with the pigmentation in the eye and the rejuvenation of the eye. Understand that pigmentation was one session in just 4 days. Now, if you can find a polynucleotide result that is on par with that, then they're pretty similar. If they all need 3 sessions and you can't see anything after 1, then there's your answer. I'm being political here. I can't say yes or no because I'm here in a kind of official capacity, if you like. That was the best Synacos webinar. Thank you. You're very welcome. Nutricos has been discontinued. Would you recommend any other brand? Any other brand? If you Google something called Aminother, I'm going to type it here. Hopefully you can see that in the chat. If not, I'll spell it. AMINO, amino, and then Ther, THER. That is what I actually take every single day, okay, without fail, twice a day. That is so powerful. Combinations of amino acids have actually been shown, like I said, to actually slow down cancer and even to destroy cancer in certain areas, and it massively improve immunity. There was one study on Aminother. They gave it to elderly patients in a hospital. So first of all, they're old, got a load of medication, so not healthy people to start with, and already in hospital, so something seriously wrong with them. The worst kind of patients to try and get results on. They slashed that hospital's infection rate by 1/3 because of the immunity increase and the mitochondrial biogenesis that you're inducing and the mitochondrial health that you're inducing. It's extraordinary. For me, that is the most important supplement I can take. Like I said, every day. It's a sachet, it's a powder. You just mix it with water. And it's just a bit lemony. It's quite nice. You can do Synacos with PRP. What's the point? There's no point because PRP is based on the components of Aminother. PRP is based on the components of alpha granules, which you're extracting from blood, right? Alpha granules contain things that, let's say, are anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory. They have things that make things and that break things. So you have both. So if you look at a study like Ibrahim 2018, half the face was microneedling, the other half was microneedling and PRP. Zero difference in the end result. So what is the PRP adding? Absolutely nothing. And that there's a lot of research and a lot of talks at specific high-end detailed conferences where people are just bashing PRP now. Another thing is, if your patient is coming to you because the skin is not good, then that means a lot of things in their body are not good. Otherwise, the skin wouldn't be in the state it is. So if you're using the blood of someone who is not having great physiology and you're extracting what's in there, then you're putting something from not great physiology into an area with not great physiology. What would you expect? Whereas Synacos does the opposite of that. It ignores the current physiology and just optimizes it currently. And so there's no point combining them because they're just complete opposite of each other. There's no net improvement from combining them both. So personally, I don't do PRP anymore, really. If it's for the hair, I might do some. That's pretty much the only thing. I'm going to type in a chat here, which is really, really important study. Martinez Zapata 2016. That is the largest ever systematic review of PRP. It's a Cochrane review. What did they find? Zero indication for dermatological context, because nearly all the studies on it are useless if you really drill down. I know a lot of people just read the abstracts, but actually you need to read the entire thing. And when you read the entire thing, there's so many holes you can pick apart. And so that paper summarized everything for PRP, and it's no wonder it's just not being used that much nowadays. Cromlin is close to me. Brilliant. Yes. If one has started using Alipro for one treatment and then wants to change to Synacos, there shouldn't be any interaction, should there? I would give it probably about 4 weeks to hear, because you want to wait till all the cell cycles are completed, all the proteins are synthesized, and then you know you are definitely starting from fresh. So I think that's everything. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want any more, please visit my YouTube channel. If you just type in Dr. Abs, you'll find there's really detailed stuff on there that I don't think anyone else is teaching. I have done a webinar on skin tightening like this. It's very long. It's 3 hours, so there's a lot of detail there, and that's the compressed version. There's a video I did on hyaluronic acid, which Danny is chunking through now. It is extremely detailed. It's probably the most detailed teaching on hyaluronic acid and dermal fillers anyone's ever made. It's 5 hours. You will need to chunk that up. I don't think anyone can watch it in one go. I recorded it in one go. It's all one take, which is why there's no cuts. I'm slightly odd, as you can probably guess now, but there's a lot of stuff on there. And my Instagram is Dr. Abs as well. Just send me a message if you're after anything, you have any questions. Message Dr. Sheila, dr.sheila, if you're interested in training. If you're in London, if you want to go a bit more detailed, or if you can't make it to London, Medifex is training in different places. Just email the team and they'll show you that as well. That's it. So thank you very much. And Danny, anything you want to add? There's 15% off.
Thank you, Dr. Abs. It's been incredibly informative. I can see from all the questions that we've had, all of the interaction, it's been wonderful. Anybody whose question hasn't been answered, I'll ask Dr. Abs to answer them, and I'll get your replies out to you individually. But please, if there's anything anyone needs, get in contact with us at Medifex, and we can help you out.
Take care, everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. Take care.